So we're so excited, Dr. Chris. I know we've had a lot of interviews going on all day and even yesterday. And this is for Dr. Chris's book, Invoking Your Inner Therapist and Heart Failure. And there's a lot of patient stories in this book that really help. I think it's the art of storytelling that makes it come to life. And as I was paging through it, all through the pages of your book, we have numerous endorsements from other cardiologists, from other doctors, from other people in the field. And one of the things we wanted to talk about today is how diabetes plays a role in the functions of the heart. And I know there's a lot of people that have had a tremendous lot of questions about, well, how did the heart, the kidneys, all the other functions of the body relate to the health of the heart? Could we address that today? And for those that are listening, this book is now available on Amazon and will be in bookstores the next week or so. So thank you.
No, thank you for that question, Becky. Diabetes is such an important risk factor for heart disease, and the prevalence of diabetes is only increasing in the world. And the diabetes is increased blood sugar, and this blood sugar is actually causing a lot more damage to multiple portions of the body. And so when it's not well controlled, it can lead to multiple diseases. And we actually separate them into what is called microvascular and then macrovascular. Micro is small blood vessels, and those are in the eyes and the kidney and the neuropathy pain that they experience in the lower extremities. Those are the small vessels. And then the big vessels are macrovascular, and that's the heart and the stroke, and also blocked arteries in the leg. And many of them get amputated if the blood sugar is not well controlled over time. The problem that we see with onset of diabetes is that if you were to draw a line right here, and this is the onset of diabetes, 10 years before the onset of diabetes, what is called the pre-diabetic state, the patients may not have any symptom, and slowly it's creeping up into their system to the extent that by the time they actually develop overt diabetes through blood work, it's already a little bit late in the game, because during this pre-diabetic state, they're slowly eroding their blood vessels from head to the toe. And so that pre-diabetic state is about obesity, increased body mass index, increased waist circumference, increased levels of what's called triglyceride in the body, which is a reflection of high carbohydrate intake and probably genetically mediated, and also high blood pressure. They can have all of this and have a low level of what's called HDL, or the good cholesterol is low. So when any three out of the five components suddenly is called metabolic syndrome, and this, without any diabetes there, they can slowly contribute to all the complications of diabetes. So that's why I call diabetes not just a blood sugar disease. I call diabetes a blood vessel disease, because it affects the blood vessel. That's why we call it microvascular complication, macrovascular. If the audience has to take anything away from diabetes, the blood sugar by itself may or may not cause a problem with very high levels and then landing up in complication because of high blood sugar, called ketoacidosis and beyond. But we're talking about blood vessels being affected right from the get-go, long before even the onset of diabetes itself. And I think that's the message I want to give it to them. And they need to be protecting every that organ in the body.
So when somebody comes to you and they're facing issues with this, because I know my aunt has had diabetes, and she finally, she was able to retire, and she started spending her time giving a lot of attention to her health and her diet and exercise, and she's been able to get herself off of a lot of her medications as a result. So the human body's pretty amazing thing. If you give it what it needs and you pay closer attention, typically we can turn a lot of it around. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think lifestyle modification, that's what we call it, LSM, and it's about diet and exercise and not, taking up smoking. Because once they take up smoking for fun, it is now suddenly becomes a disease of the mind, because now they're not able to quit because this is controlling the cigarette. So all of this lifestyle modification has to start early in childhood. So childhood obesity is very high. Diet, exercise, making sure they eat lots of fruits and vegetables. So let me again raise a very powerful point from a large clinical trial. It's called InterHeart trial. InterHeart was about 55 countries, hundreds of thousands of patient population, or large populations, and they screened the people who had heart attack, and then they compared to the ones who did not, and they wanted to see in 30,000 patients or 30,000 odd, what are the major risk factors that actually made them at risk for a heart attack compared to the ones who did not get a heart attack. And there are 9 things that came out, and same simple things like blood pressure and diabetes and cholesterol and the ones and smoking and all. The things that stood out very tall in the study are the people who consumed fruits and vegetables about 3 to 5 helpings a day. They reduced the risk of heart attack by 30%. People who had significant reduction of psychosocial stress, they reduced the heart attack by 30%. The people with high psychosocial stress actually were having a high level of heart attack because the stress increases all these neurohormones in the body inside the blood vessel, and they start eroding the plaque that is on the inside of the blood vessel, and that suddenly like an avalanche and blocks the road. And even though you're going on a ski slope and it's beautiful and nice, and the road is clean and there is snow out there, but something gets flipped from there, boom, 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 the road is blocked suddenly. And just a minute ago, the road was open. That analogy from a blood vessel perspective is very real. And that stress level can suddenly increase the neurohormones and then block that blood vessel with clotting factors coming together. And so, yes, I think there's something very important about being calm, cool, and collected and being at peace with yourself. It's very important. And also, the lifestyle modification, as you said, your own family, you can reduce the onset of significant risk factors and reduce the number of medications that you're taking if we follow through on some of those recommendations very clearly. Yeah.
Very clear. And I find it interesting that it's that where you are in your life and your relationships with people, it can have a lot of bearing over heartbreak. Things that happen in your life that cause heartbreak. And you found that there's a definite connection there.
Yes, clearly, I think psychosocial stress plays a big role, specifically from the heart perspective. When there is grief, somebody very close to you passes away, or is severely cancer, end stage, whatever is going on, and then the grief that you experience can actually directly affect the heart muscle. There is a condition called Takotsubo syndrome, TAKOTSUB, or Takotsubo. It's there in my book as well, in one of the chapters, that where because of the grief, the apex, the tip of the heart starts to balloon out, and we call it apical ballooning syndrome. That's another name for it. And many times when you see that apex ballooning on the echocardiogram, because they're feeling short of breath or they're feeling like they're having chest pain, and when we do an echo, we see the apex balloon, and suddenly we say, "Oh, is that a heart attack? The blood vessel that supplies the tip of the heart, is that blocked? That's a heart attack." So we go and inject a dye and do what's called an angiogram, only to realize that lo and behold, the arteries are all open. There is no heart attack, but the apex is damaged. And that's the apical ballooning syndrome, or Takotsubo syndrome, that we're talking about, purely because of grief and stress level in which is increasing a lot of these negative neurohormones in the body. But the beauty is you quickly identify it, and then now suddenly you can take care of it with simple medications. You can totally normalize the heart within a short period of time. So that's the beauty, and we don't need to worry about long-term complications as long as you deal with the stress and manage it more effectively.
Very good. So kind of changing the subject a little bit. COVID-19. We're faced with this front and center. It is not just here in the United States; it's worldwide. How does that affect the heart, and what are you facing in the medical community with? How do we handle the change this brings to our world?
So clearly, it's devastating what the pandemic has done. It affected every sector out there, you name it, and it's caused a lot of damage. And yes, I think it's still ongoing. I just heard this morning from a top cardiologist. He just called me to wish me good luck from India in New Delhi. And he says he's been stuck at home for almost 7, 8 months, and he's doing only virtual. A doctor, a cardiologist, is only stuck at home. They're not allowed to get out. They locked down. And he says just this last week, the flare is surging even higher. It's increasing, and people are not following simple things like distancing and masking and washing hands. And clearly, those three simple things can prevent the spread of this virus. And once it affects the body, mostly in the lung initially, but it starts to spread in multiple portions of the body, and could be kidney, could be the heart, could be the inner lining of the blood vessel. We call it glycocalyx and endothelium. It can affect it to the extent that suddenly the heart is now suffering, and there is what is called myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart muscle, or pericarditis, which is inflammation of the annula that the heart sits inside. And those are two major things that can happen, and the heart muscle can get weaker and they go into heart failure. So COVID-19 can affect the heart, can affect in a big way and devastating way. If they're in the hospital, the pneumonia, and then the septic shock, it spreads the infection all over the body. And then many times the people who are dying or critically ill in the ICU, they already have damage to the heart muscle because of COVID-19. Some of them are getting heart attack with inner lining of the blood vessel to supply the heart muscle called coronaries. Some of them are getting a heart attack, and that blood vessel is blocking off too. So those are the people who are really having a bad outcome. So, we have to prevent even just getting from home to the emergency room, and we can prevent that from happening. Then we will reduce all of the negative outcomes of this disease. Until such time, it's going to be a struggle, and I'm not even sure when the vaccine will come. I mean, it's coming, but I think we just have to wait it out a little bit longer, because then we'll have to say that, hey, the vaccine is here, let's go for it. But we studied it only for 3 months, then the vaccine is valid only for 3 months. They have to keep getting it every 3 months, 4 times a year. So let's just wait it out and do it the right way, in a robust way, that we can actually protect ourselves and from a scientific point of view.
Well, the fact is that it's not been even enough time to test it thoroughly, so to see the real true effects and the side effects and everything else that can come from it. So for those that are listening, Dr. Vijay's book is now available on Amazon, and it will be in the book catalogs for all the bookstores. So it can be ordered you'll be able to find it on Barnes & Noble, Borders, all of the bookstores, including Walmart.com. We'll be having that probably within the next week. That will take place. It's available as a Kindle. It's available in full color, which is showing right now. And the full color, even though the price is $70 on that, it is remarkable. It is beautiful because the pictures are so. Dr. Vijay's used a lot of images inside his book, and those images are so descriptive. It really helps you to see the function of the heart. Inside his book, he also has video, a lot of videos. So there's QR codes that where he comes to life and he's talking. You get to know him in a different way. Inside his book is also many endorsements and testimonials of people that have pre-read the book. Doctors and other from all over the world have have endorsed Dr. Vijay. And so the book will also be available in black and white, this same book. This is the black and white version. It'll be available on Amazon and other bookstores as well. And so the cost will be considerably reduced. Regardless, I think this book needs to be on every bookshelf and every household, because the way you've brought this, it's a textbook actually, but it's also a book that if you have questions about, well, what about my cholesterol? What about triglycerides? What about arteriosclerosis? What about all of these different functions? You you have a way of being able to describe it where if we're not in the medical profession, we understand, and that's really good. So any thoughts that you would, I know you do a ton of philanthropic work. Do you want to share a little bit about what you've done in the philanthropic circles?
Sure, yeah, that's very close to my heart and very passionate about it. And so passion and compassion, I think those are the two things that drive me. We started a nonprofit called Twin Epidemic of Diabetes and Heart Disease among ethnic communities around the world. And we initiated in Vancouver in 2010. And we've been presenting at meetings, educating the healthcare community as well as the lay community. We've done, I got a great opportunity to be in a place called Ladakh in the Himalayas, which is about 13,000 feet elevation. And really to get any equipment or supplies over there is extremely difficult. And the terrain is very rough. And more than 6 months of the year, 8 months of the year, they are totally snowed in. And so there's only a small window where a lot of people actually come to that place because it's just so amazingly beautiful. And Dalai Lama, His Holiness, his foundation actually built this hospital. And now they're still expanding and they're building more for some research. And so we had an opportunity to go for the first time in 2013. One of my patients in Scottsdale actually was dying in the middle of the night. I'm there with him and his wife. And suddenly a phone call comes from nowhere to another son who is a radiologist is visiting from Louisiana, and he's talking, and it looks like he is not too happy or upset. He said, "Oh, just go talk to the doctor. He's here." He gives the phone to me, and then so I talked to Bill for a short time. I used some choice of words because his father is dying, and I had no idea who this guy was or where he is calling from. And some of this choice of words that I used, it looks like it touched him. And at the end, he said, "Can you just send me your email?" And I said, "Okay." And then suddenly his father passes on. And then I get an email from him saying that he is actually out in the Himalayas in this place at 13,000 feet. He left home at age 17, ran away. Nobody knew where he was. And this is age, he is now 52. 35 years later, he's reconnecting with his father and mother. And he had not connected with them until then because his brother trying to connect. And he had told them that his father is dying. And then he's calling his brother from the Himalayas saying that how is he doing? And suddenly, when I started talking to him about his father, who he did not know because he was my patient, and he was very touched. And then when he started telling me that he ran away to the Himalayas, that became a Buddhist, and he was working with the monks, and he's creating K-12 schools. He created women's health, eye disease is so high there. Doctors from all over the world, from Singapore, New Zealand, they're all coming there. And he said, "I want you to come and help the heart kidney diabetes intersection create a wave and a momentum for us over here. And I'll get you thousands of people are waiting." So that's what we did in 2013. I've been doing almost every year, taking 20 to 30 people with me over there. And most people who actually have been there with me are so touched by the gratitude and the humility that those people exhibit, which is again deeply entrenched in their own DNA, and it's very heartwarming to help those people who are so needy. They haven't seen a doctor in their whole lifetime. Many of them, they would come walking for hundreds of miles just to see the doctors who are here now visiting from the U.S. And I had friends visiting from England. They came to join me from England and from India, a huge group of people. So that's one of the mission and a lot of other humanitarian missions. We were in Ghana, Africa, again serving. We saw 1,700 people in 4 days. That's serving them, which is actually, I have a blog out there. I think it's called the Transmutable, Amazing Transmutable Experience in Ghana, Africa. Again, very fulfilling for some reason when you give back and give
Mhm.
a little bit of knowledge that we gained over the years. You use it to give back to the community who is in need and who doesn't understand. And then now we take equipment. Now we're getting equipment and supplies to some of those places where I work with Project Cure, which is another large nonprofit organization. I do the education and training. They give the equipment supplies. Suddenly we complement each other. I'm one of their ambassadors. Needs ambassador. It's just very rejuvenating for me to be in this humanitarian mission area in multiple places around the world, including here in locally, nationally, Native Americans, Afro-American community, the Korean and Chinese community. So we've been doing a lot of screening programs, and we connect with Cardiorenal Society of America. They have a Path to Wellness, the screening program that they get funded. And I was one of the founding members of the Cardiorenal Society of America, connecting the heart-kidney intersection many years ago. And now, 10 years later, that society has grown significantly, and we're doing a lot of screening programs through that society. So collaborate with multiple different other nonprofits and with my nonprofit. That way, we can really have a tremendous outreach to large population out there. So yeah, it's very fulfilling for the audience out there. Just check into Twin Epidemic. The website is actually maybe launching as well, renovating it, and it's a work in progress. It should be coming up as well today, I think. And so go ahead and sign up as a member, and then write something at the blog or write something over there. It will be interactive. Mention that you're interested in joining me on some incredible mission that we do all over the world, and help the needy. And that way, serving the underserved with love and compassion is our motto.
Awesome. Very good. Well, for those that are listening, take the time, purchase the book. It's a must read. I think it should be in the homes of every family. It should be taught, used in the medical universities where they're teaching our up and coming doctors the ways of how the human heart works and how it all intertwines. And also every doctor should have it in their office for their patients to read. So be sure and pick up a copy. This launch is pretty amazing because there's so many people that have just really are benefiting from this, but this book will be serving the world for a long time to come. Thank you, Dr. BJ.
Thank you so much, Becky. Thank you for having me.
My privilege.